My name is Matt Gambell, and I am the developer at Skytanic Studios, and I'm working on RPG Tycoon.
So, what I wanted to start with is, what were some of your inspirations for RPG Tycoon?
Um, I've always grown up playing simulation games. For instance, things like Theme Hospital, Roller Coaster Tycoon, um, Zoo Tycoon, Theme Park World, just kind of so many, like, Sim City, The Sims, everything really. And it's kind of my passion for the sort of games that I like to play. Um, and I think I was kind of procrastinating from doing my final year dissertation at uni, and I was on the lookout for some kind of simulation builder game at the time, and nothing really existed for the type of thing I wanted to play. So I was just like, well, I haven't done some programming in a while, so I thought I'd just mess around with a prototype, and that kind of started to develop into what RPG Tycoon has become.
Excellent. So, when you grew up, you were playing, the Sid Meier classics, basically sim everything. What are some
Pretty
of the
much.
ideas that you took from that and twisted to be your own for this game?
I've never had a question like that. So I think something that's always been really interesting to me has been automation. I love about I think one of the best things about these kind of games are being given a world or some kind of scenario or event, making a state change, whether that be by building something or removing something from the world or anything along those lines, and then essentially seeing how the simulation reacts to what you've done as a player. Um, and it was a moment when I kind of placed in the adventurers into the game, which are characters that come into your village or your kingdom and start shopping and things like that. And it was seeing them walk around and shop on their own that was when I really started to feel like it had become something. So it's a lot of those sort of elements of just the management of resources and gold and watching the simulation play out based on your decisions.
Excellent. What's the engine that you're using behind all this?
It's not actually an engine. The game is running using a of Adobe Air, so it's actually essentially built in Flash. But it's all class based, so there's no engine that I have behind it. Everything's programmed by me, so it's just kind of frameworks and libraries that I'm referencing.
In RPG Tycoon, you combine a little bit of what seems to be tabletop elements, where
hmm
some of the decisions that are made, there's a roll of the dice. Have you ever played tabletop games, or are you drawing from any influences there?
No, I mean that feature was actually added fairly recently. It's always been in the background, but players didn't really know that that was what was happening. So I tried to make it more obvious. But the development kind of design of the game has always been it's based off of role playing games, and you are creating a kingdom that these worlds that would be set in. That's kind of the idea. So I've always drawn more so off of other RPGs that I've played, and I know that there's just through lore, I know that and online culture, I know that that's how a lot of role playing games are played. Tabletop games are all dice based, very dice based, heavily based on stats and numbers and things, and that's always been an interest to me. And like I said, the background in Tycoon and simulation, they're often very well driven by stats and numbers and dice rolls and all those sort of things. And yeah, it was more just creating a front to the player to show them what was happening, and it seemed like a good fit. But no, I've never played them myself. I would love to actually. I've always been very interested, and I'd love to get in on a Dungeons and Dragons or is it Fate? I think another one is one of the. Yeah, I'd love to have a go at one of those one day maybe. But no, yeah, not just yet. But I'm always, like I said, I'm always trying to design and draw inspirations from the genres that I feel the game suits the most. Because I think if it feels like it fits, then the player won't question it. It's the same with story design. Like if there's a game mechanic and I can somehow link that back to the story that's being created, then I'll do my best to do that.
Excellent. Let's talk about your studio. So, first of all, what's the correct pronunciation?
Skitanic Studios.
Okay, and where'd you come up with the name Scatanic Studios?
I'm a fan of ska music,
Hmm.
and there's a band called Real Big Fish who are quite a big ska band, and they have a song called Skitanic, and that is pretty much it. And well, my company is actually because of my film background, is actually GS Productions Limited. But I thought that wasn't really a very suitable games company name. So Skitanic Studios is essentially a division of my brand, and moving forward, that's what it would be. So it almost like GS Productions would be my parent company for anything else that goes on. But yeah, it was just a nicer name, I think, for a gaming company more than anything else. Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm currently working on the 0.9 build of the game, which already is bringing an improvement to the way that settlements handle. That's what I've been working on the past few days, and the way that Kingdom AI interacts with you. I want that to be a bit more of a challenge and a lot more going on there. But I think more than anything, please, if you're interested in the product, to get involved and join the community. I'm trying my hardest to do as much as I can, as quick as I can. And it's with your feedback I can do that, definitely. And at the same time, I'm hoping that I can get the game done reasonably soon. I feel like every time I do get closer with each update. But yeah, there's definitely a few interesting things coming out. It's a lot closer than it was a few months ago. And if you, I don't really know. I think that's probably it, actually. Yeah, there's just, if you're interested, definitely get involved.
Are you creating all of the different stories for the epic quests, for the little pop-ups that come in? Are those all written by you? Do you have anybody else helping you out?
So they originally they were written all by me up until about 2 or 3 weeks ago, where I met an author, actually a writer, at a convention, and she took a really keen interest in the game, and she'd never really done anything like that before, but I kind of asked her if she would be interested in writing some of the quests, and she kind of jumped on board, and she sent me a whole bunch. A couple of them were actually written by my stepmom, because she was really interested. So it's kind of a mix between myself and a few other people that I've kind of befriended. But something about them is they're very easy to write. So it's in the future, I would like to be able to let other people write them, and it's something that I'm interested in doing moving on. Where I've literally just actually this week or last week made that file available, and it should be available to see in the next build, so that players can actually come in, and as long as they kind of keep to the way that the game handles it, as long as they keep to some of the data structures, they'll actually be able to write their own quests as well.
Oh, fantastic. And that kind of segues into our next question. With modular content, I mean, obviously, Steam is a huge community for modular content, and a lot of developers, both AAA and indie, have been going that route. What are some of the ideas that you've seen posted, even just in the short time the game's been up, in the Steam forums, that you really like and can't wait to see?
So a lot of players have had discussions towards quests, and it's something that they've always been talking about, different types of quests, things they'd like to see heroes do, and types of buildings that they'd like to see in the game. Now, with it being me, there's obviously a limit to how much I want to work on that side of the game. And so I think what I think is going to be really interesting once I hopefully manage to get it involved is just seeing the kind of buildings and the kind of heroes and quests and things that players start to create. I definitely think that's one of the most interesting things that they're talking about right now.
Definitely. Now I saw on your press kit you pitched this to Steam Greenlight, which I can imagine is kind of a nerve-wracking process. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was strange because it was really on a whim. Like I said, I had just come off. I was just working on my third year dissertation at the time. I mean, I'm a media production graduate, so I have a background in filmmaking, really. So I mean, I've always been used to pitching, that kind of thing, because that's always been what I've done, having to kind of pitch projects at university, that kind of thing. So and I've always had a presence online, so I'm confident in the way that I can try and sell a product at least. But it was nerve-wracking as towards seeing how a community would be interested in a topic, because I had people saying, "Oh, you should maybe put it on Greenlight, and you should look into perhaps kind of making this a thing." And yeah, I mean, it kind of happened all out of nowhere because it got greenlit very quickly. I mean, I managed to get greenlit in 9 days. That's literally, it was a week later, and I was on Skype to my friend at the time. I said, "Oh my God, I've made it. I've now got to do this full time, sort of thing. This is now a thing." So it went from very quickly being a kind of just a project that I was messing around with as a prototype to something that clearly had some market interest.
Now, playing through the quests, I can definitely see a couple of influences from modern day fantasy authors. Who are some of your influences for the storytelling side?
Um, I don't actually know. There's nothing specifically that I've read that has influenced me. I've always played a lot of RPGs as well. And some maybe just I've watched a lot of films and movies and things. So there are a lot of references to pop culture that I try to kind of keep towards, just because I think it's always nice as a player to kind of get a reference to something. And I've tried to be quite satirical in some of the writing in the game, just because I think that can always make you chuckle a little bit as a player. And I mean, that's what's important to me, is that it's an entertaining kind of ride. So yeah, there's not actually any major kind of influences other than maybe just pop culture things that I've witnessed and I kind of joking about with.
When you were first conceptualizing this game, what are some of the things that started at the beginning and are still in the game, and what are some ideas that you just weren't able to implement?
Wow, I've got to think quite far back. Okay, so there was one of the very first versions of the game. You were able to actually click on also all of the stores kind of had their own storefront and had their own items that they would sell to adventurers, and you could actually go in and manage those, and you'd have to restock them and things like that. But very quickly, as I kind of started to scale the game up a bit more, I realized that was starting to get quite complicated for me, and it would have meant that I would have had to create essentially a context menu for every single building in the game, and there wasn't a way at the time that I could very easily make that a scalable thing. So I had to change that and develop it and make it scaled down to a fact that they were more just a leveling system, and they kind of again were automated themselves. So that kind of never really made it further than what it did. There's also a difference with it being not finished is there's also a lot of stuff that I've still got on the list to do, and I'm not sure whether I'll make it. I would at some point like to have a water system in the game, but it's not a priority. And if it doesn't make it, maybe it'll be something that turns up perhaps in the future if I continue post-release, or something that players might be able to mod in somehow. But it's not integral to the actual content of the game, and that's sort of where my focus is at the moment. But in regards to something you asked about stuff that has made it all the way through. The heroes actually have constantly stayed the same. I think from the beginning, Philip the Brave was the name of one of the heroes that you can hire. And he has, although he has changed look slightly, Philip the Brave is still in the last version, the current version of the game. So I guess the OG heroes are still with us.
Excellent. With the type of game that you've created, so it's much, I feel, leans much more towards the tycoon genre than a simulation. You don't have to micromanage quite as much as you said. Right. You don't need to go into the menus of each different store. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the tycoon elements that were the most challenging to put together?
That's a really good question. I found actually really at the moment is the balance of the game, and I'm currently reworking on the AI that's running in the background, because obviously you have kingdoms competing against you, and that's the trickiest thing, because that's always been a thing in Tycoon, has been balance. And if the balance of a Tycoon game is wrong and it feels too easy or not challenging enough, that can really skew a game. So almost every iteration of the game, I'm changing how much buildings cost, how much the attraction rating you're getting each time you place a decoration, how much adventurers are willing to spend, needs and wants. And I think that's been one of the hardest things to work with.
All right. What are some of your goals for the future? Are you thinking maybe multiplayer, or what will make this a complete game for you?
Okay, I'll have a quick look. Actually, I've got a few things on the list of what's coming up with what I'm aiming towards. I think at the moment there's not much of an end game, and I think that's really, you know, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of the systems in place now that are there and almost feature complete, but there just needs to be kind of more of it, such as a couple more shops and buildings and a couple more heroes. But once you get to, you know, roughly I'd say 2/3 of the way through, you kind of start running out of things to do, or you kind of start topping and min-maxing kind of everything to a point where, you know, you're just getting money and stuff. So there needs to be a bit more of a challenge towards the end game to make sure you're still involved while you play the last few years. And once that's through, I think we're closer to a more complete state. And there's a couple of other things I want to do, like add more special buildings. I introduced them a few updates ago, actually, where there's a kind of overall, I think I called them dynamic quest lines, where once you hit a few certain conditions, such as creating a hero with a trait that has fearless, you can then send him out on a certain type of quest that wouldn't otherwise have been unlocked. And a few more of them. I've got a couple of those lined up. And again, that's just to really push almost the meta game forward, where there's other things to do outside of the main game that some players might want to do and some players might not, but it will kind of continue moving the game forward at a steady pace.
Excellent. Well, once RPG Tycoon is complete and out there, and you've made your millions and millions, what's the next game that you would like to make?
Okay, I'm having game ideas constantly, actually, and it's tricky being still in development, having new ideas and getting excited about them, and wanting to just kind of scrap this and start it, you know, and start the next one. But so I'm writing them down, and I'm making notes of ideas I have, and making sure that I get this done first, building a good base. And you know, I've learned a lot through this, but without giving too much away, I'd want to create a game based on a board game that I used to play. Actually, there was a board game called Payday. Don't know if you've heard of it, and it was all about buying and selling. And moving across each month, and you'd have to pay your bills. So it was managing money, and also kind of social events and things, whilst trying to make the most money from all of these deals that you're getting. So that was an idea. That's been an idea for one of the games that I want to do. I've got a bit more kind of on paper, and I did a prototype a few weeks. Actually, it was a few months ago now. And then there's a few other things, maybe a couple of more Tycoon games down the line, but they'd require a bit more time and maybe a bit of money to back them. So I think we've got to see really where RPG Tycoon takes me once it's released, before I have a solid idea of what I'm doing next. But yeah, there's a few ideas in the pipeline, definitely.
Excellent. And what's been the response from? I mean, I've read some of what's been on the Steam forums, but what have been some of the personal responses that you have gotten since the game's release?
I think, you know, you've always got the generic anonymous internet response, which can always be one way very strongly or one way very negatively. And I, you know, as someone who's creating something, it's quite difficult not to take those to heart. But I always, if there is a negative, I'll always try and find a positive out there, because something has caused them to write that, and you know, I'll always try and push some kind of feedback from that. But from a community side of things, there's a regular community of players on the game who are posting on, like you said, posting on the forums, and I really appreciate that. There's a lot of really useful suggestions and kind of bug notices and things on the forums to just help me out and develop, and they seem to be really enjoying it. With each update, I'm kind of getting comments from them saying what they really like. So that's always really good. Again, it's one of those things where you always have a vocal minority and a quiet majority, you know, is that I know that there are people playing it that are enjoying it because I have that statistical information, but they're not necessarily posting about it because, you know, not a lot of people do. You know, often you will just play a game, enjoy it, and that will be the thing. So, but yeah, from the community that that has started to grow, it seems to be reasonably positive. But it's always going to be a mixed bag, isn't it, I think?
Absolutely. The internet is a wild west sometimes.
Yes, it is, definitely.
What are some of your favorite games that you're playing right now?
Okay. So a friend of mine, Tim Wicksteed, has just released Big Pharma. So I've been playing that fairly recently. That was really good. Also a kind of simulation-y kind of game. Um, I picked up Mad Max recently, which is a good for me. It's a good waiting point because it's from Avalanche. It's a good waiting spot for waiting for Just Cause 3 to come out.
Yep.
Because I am definitely a fan of the open world destruction game. Um, I really got into Rocket League, which I never thought I would be interested in at all. But the craziness of the physics and I'm actually okay at it. I'm not good at multiplayer games usually, and I'm not a huge fan of playing online often, just because again of internet community and. But yeah, I've really found that Rocket League has been a thing that I've been enjoying. But I think realistically, we're all just waiting for Fallout 4, aren't we?
Yes, absolutely. We've written Bethesda several times trying to get them. Just send us a copy early. We know it's done. Come on. Well, one thing that we've been focusing on our site lately is indie developers. We definitely want to support you guys as best we can because, from our perspective, the indie realm is starting to bring in the newest and freshest ideas to the gaming community. So, what are some things that you would like to say to prospective indie developers out there who just need that extra push, who don't know how to get their idea started?
Um, I think I think if you're interested in doing it, I think just do it. I think again, I mean, I'm essentially making a Flash game, and not a lot of people get surprised when they find that out because I've tried very hard to not make it feel like a Flash game, and I've learned a lot. I mean, before I started doing this, I didn't know how class-based programming worked, and because I come from that background. Whereas, within a period of a year and a half, I've learned a heck of a lot more than I knew, and I think that's what it's all about. It's just if you make something you're always going to be better off than if you didn't make anything. If you have a product to show, somebody at some point will be interested in it, and that somehow it will at least get you started. So just create things and create as much as you can to your best of your ability.
Outstanding. All right, and last but not least, if let's say a AAA publisher or a developer came to you and offered you ungodly amounts of money to sell your game, what are your thoughts right now? Are you keeping this as your baby and you just want to see it from beginning to end, or do you have some ideas that you want to get out there and jump on board with the money machine?
I think I would stick to working. I mean, it would be nice to have all that money, but I think right now I want to see this through to the end. Just because it's my flagship product, this is one that I can say, well, that was my first game. Maybe in the future I might collaborate, but I feel like this is the one that I have to keep my name on it and keep my identity with, because it is, it's very much me. It's a game that I enjoy playing, and it's a game that hopefully others enjoy playing. But I'm making it for me at the end of the day. Based on what I said, at the beginning of this, it was entirely something that I made because it was something that I wanted to play.
Excellent. And let's see. Read through my notes here. Got that. Oh, I'll have to edit some of these together so it flows better.
Tycoon.
Excellent. Matt, I really appreciate your time. This has been a pleasure for me, and I've started, I'm about, I want to say 10 years into my kingdom. She's doing okay. Okay. Definitely could use a little bit more gold every now and then, but
right.
My heroes, Philip the Brave, has suffered many a grievous wound, but he recovers and he goes back out in the field. So you gotta love his wound.
Yes, it's always good to send them back. I literally, as soon as they come back into the kingdom, I send them right back out again to get me more gold. So
we're on a clock here, Gandalf. Let's get out there.
Yeah.
One thing that you have hinted at is user-created content. Are there anything outside of the mod community, something that you want to develop in the game as a player-created tool, that they could create their own building assets or create their own hero assets, create their own weapons, anything like that?
So there's not going to be anything in game. With the 0.9 release, I'm going to be unofficially opening up the data files for players to edit without full support. Just because I'd like to let players play around if they want to. But obviously, I've still got to focus on finalizing development before I do that. Probably then at release, around about the time that I feel that the game's comfortable to release, or slightly after release, I will create what I'm going to probably call a mod pack, which will be a couple of videos showing you how to mod the game. And then if I can do it, I'd like to build in workshop support into the game, so that you can just add mods from Steam or from the source that way. I can't guarantee that because I don't know, because it's going to be an experiment to whether I can support it or not. But you should be able to, yes, you will be able to add your own buildings and things into the game. But there's not going to be any real tools to do that apart from just kind of import and export tools. But there will be kind of guides and videos on the process that you need to go through to actually create a mod, hopefully.
Excellent.